walk free in the state of Ohio. So it doesn't matter to me what the federal government does. Right. He was still let free in the state of Ohio. What does that say about Ohio?
That's right. That's right.
What does it say about Ohio?
What about the thought of him possibly becoming a police officer?
He's an idiot. And anybody who hires him, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be sending flyers and mail everywhere this man ever works for the rest of his life. And if they decide they want to just hire him, ain't nothing we can do about that. But I'm going to make sure that every community that he ever lives in knows that he's nothing but a racist bigot who pulled a gun and shot a man in the head because he didn't comply with him.
Trina, how will you continue this fight?
People coming out.
I'm going to continue. I didn't just get involved with this when it was my brother Sam, which is what's so heartbreaking. I have cared about so many cases. You know, yesterday, there was a young man, the boy, the 15-year-old got shot in the head. They indicted the police officer in Texas. They said they haven't had a conviction against a police officer in 43 years. I hope that prosecutor doesn't say, well, since it's so unlikely that we'll get one, we're just going to let this man walk. If that is the standard, then we all are doomed. And it's turning. A white woman got shot by a police officer in Minnesota yesterday. The day before.
Oh, it's turned.
And so all you got to do is put in on YouTube police brutality. They pulling white people out of wheelchairs, threw a white woman who was drunk on her head, all her teeth on the ground, and all the other police officers, the so-called good ones, were standing there picking her teeth up. Nobody arrested a police officer. I don't care if you white or black. This fight to me is about law enforcement having a free reign to shoot and kill people. They just getting away with it far more with blacks. They doing it way more with blacks, but they doing it to every ethnic group in America. Somebody wrote on social media that since this woman, Janine, I believe, in Minnesota, God rest her soul, here in the country from Australia, just got here. And their country gets to see how ridiculous our police officers are. She calls 911 because she's trying to report an assault somewhere in her neighborhood, and she gets gunned down by a police officer.
That she called.
So it's unbelievable. And all he would have to say is that he feared for his life, except this one's going to be a problem for America because he's a Muslim, I think, or a Middle Eastern descent. So now America going to have to decide, is it really Blue Lives Matter? Because if it's Blue Lives Matter, that white woman will never get justice. She will get treated just like every black person in America. But it's a Muslim. So do we hate Muslims in America more than we love cops? What's going to happen? The police officer, I think this is all horrible. He's a police officer. But right now, all they're talking about on social media is he's a Muslim. So this is ridiculous.
What do you say, Tarina? You know, UC obviously has made reforms.
Why would a police officer shoot a woman who called him for 911?
Odd story. I don't know yet. What do you think about UC, the changes they've made? Does that make you feel any better?
No. They already had a murder at UC. Some guy got tased to death years ago. I don't care about their changes. They've already had 3 murders. Well, I know about one. And I know that young man was tased to death. And Officer Lyndon Schmidt still works for UC. Officer Kidd, they all came to Tenzing's side and said that they saw Tenzing being dragged, but on the stand, well, we didn't really see it.
Right.
I need for police. You guys, I respect and honor police officers. My mom has raised us to do that. All of us do. But I will never respect and honor police officers who are violating the laws and then respect a society that allows that to happen when it's in your eyeballs. Then we see on video. Sam was judged by the jurors who didn't want to convict because they valued Tenzing's life more. I've been saying that every day. It wasn't about evidence. But I do want to read something. Did you want to say something else, Arthur?
No.
We sent the letter to Dieter, and I'm going to read that letter, which got us obviously nowhere. You know, this woman comes out the blue with some petition. I guess that must have spoke more to Dieter than what we were doing. But I did write this letter yesterday, and it said, we are anxiously awaiting your decision, which now we know, and trying to have faith that you will retry Tenzing. You have said over and over that you would do what you know is right. I believe you know what is right, and that Tenzing is I believe that you know it is right that Tenzing is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and that he is convicted and sentenced to jail. This only has a chance of happening if you make a decision to retry him, and today he decided he wasn't. The decision has to be about what is right and just. Ray Tenzing purposely shot Sam DuBose in the head on July 19, 2015, and he has never provided any reasonable or legal justification for why this immediate death sentence was justifiable. Tenzing is a blatant liar, and we only know the full truth because he was wearing a body camera video which clearly refutes the extensive statement of lies that he gave to police. In Tenzing's statement, he elaborately describes how he was being dragged and holding on for dear life, and then purposely shot Sam in the head to stop the threat. Tenzing's entire statement was full of irrefutable lies, as the video evidence shows that these events just were never happening. Sam never attacked, dragged, or assaulted Ray Tenzing. Sam never put Tenzing's life at risk. Sam, we love you and I'm gonna fight for my life for you. Sam was never a threat to Tenzing or anyone else. However, Sam's life was put at risk, and Sam surely felt threatened before he was horribly shot in the head, and now Tenzing gets to play the victim. Tenzing's lawyer said that Sam would still be alive if he had just complied with Tenzing. First, they started with dragging, but now non-compliance is the reason that Sam is dead. Nowhere in Ohio's state laws or the federal laws or the United States Constitution does it grant police officers the right to use deadly force on a person who doesn't comply or who tries to flee. The Supreme Court has settled that, supposedly. It cannot stand that Sam is wrong for not complying with Tenzing, while Tenzing is giving a pass for cold-blooded murder. If Tenzing had made an error or a mistake, he has refused to acknowledge or admit such an error. In fact, Tenzing is taking the stance that there was nothing reckless at all about how or why he shot Sam in the head. He is being as forthright as possible with informing everyone who will listen that he made no mistakes and proceeded to purposely shoot Sam in the head while wearing a Confederate flag t-shirt, while asking us to believe that he feared for his life, though he never shows or explains why that fear was indeed reasonable, objective, rational, or sound. Tenzing continues to disparage Sam's reputation by saying that Sam should have been charged with felonious assault today if he had been alive. If Sam had lived, he could have been charged with driving without a front license plate and with possessing marijuana, but he never deserved to die, to be point blank executed, because he upset a police officer. Tenzing knew absolutely nothing about the marijuana in Sam's vehicle when he shot him in the head. Tenzing also made clear when asked by Officer Hine during the police interview that drugs and alcohol were not factors for him when he shot Sam. However, they spent the whole trial disparaging Sam for his lifestyle and saying that Sam was basically trying to kill an officer. Tenzing should never walk free again. And Tenzing, we ain't done. Just know we ain't done with you. Not any of the following reasons would or should justify Tenzing shooting Sam in the head. Here are the facts. Sam was not armed with any weapon. But now Tenzing says his car was a deadly weapon. His car. Sam was not aggressive with Tenzing. He even uses words like sir in the video. While some may view Sam's actions as defiant, Sam never yelled at Tenzing and never became abusive or belligerent. Further, defiance is not a justifiable reason for Tenzing to shoot Sam in the head. Sam never made any threatening moves or actions, although Tenzing's argument is that in and of itself, defiance or non-cooperation or disobedience is such a threatening action that it justifies him pulling his gun and purposely putting a bullet in the head of a man who wasn't doing anything to anyone. Sam did not have a front license plate on the car. However, he did have the front license plate in the vehicle and proceeded to show it to Tenzing, but only after asking for permission to reach for it. Sam did have marijuana in his vehicle. Not only was Tenzing not aware of this at the time of the shooting, he asserted during his police interview that drugs and alcohol were not factors in the shooting. Further, possessing marijuana is not a justifiable reason to be shot in the head. How many of us would have to get bullets in the head if that was legal? Sam did not start his vehicle. Sam did go to start his vehicle at one point, but if anything, this would have made a truly fearful officer more safe, not less safe, because the so-called threat would have been leaving away from you. Tenzing was never standing in front of Sam's vehicle, and both his feet were solidly on the ground when he pulled his gun and shot Sam in the head. All evidence All evidence, all video evidence and everything else supports that Tenzing was never hooked to or being held to the vehicle in any way. And Sam never did anything to compel Tenzing to be attached to the vehicle. Tenzing violated all his training when he reached around inside Sam's vehicle before grabbing Sam by the seatbelt so that Sam could not get away from that bullet. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that officers are not justified in shooting suspects. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that officers are not justified in shooting suspects just because they might flee from a scene. That's what happened in Walter Scott's case. 5 bullets in the back and he feared for his life down there. So even if Sam had been trying to drive away, Tenzing is not justified in pulling a gun and shooting him in the head for doing so. The only reason Tenzing would have to pull his gun and purposely shoot a man in the head was to meet force with equal force or to meet a threat with equal force. Sam used no force against Tenzing, and Sam was never ever threatening in any way to Tenzing. Tenzing is a liar who says he did nothing reckless when he purposely shot Sam DuBose in the head. Dieters, we need for you, despite all the pressures to the contrary, to keep fighting for what you told us and what you have shown us you believe about this case. Can officers shoot people who don't produce a driver's license? Can officers shoot people for closing their car doors? Can officers shoot people for trying to drive away? Should Tenzing be able to purposely put a bullet in someone's head and then blame that person for his own death while disparaging his reputation? If the answers to these questions are no, then we ask that you hold Tenzing to the fullest extent of the law and retry him for murder and manslaughter. And you still have until July 24th to do that. We look forward to meeting with you tomorrow, which was today, and we are praying that you see the right way forward for justice the same way as we do and the same as you have for the past 2 years. Thank you much, Tarina, on behalf of the DuBose family. So that's what we sent. Those are the facts, you guys. That's what happened in this case.
Did you get a response from Mr. Dieters?
Yeah, today.
He's not retrying about that letter in particular,
No.
Tarina?
No.
Do you know if he read it?
I don't know. But I've communicated this to Dieters in several meetings.
Based on the fact that there were 2 non-verdicts, there were hung juries, that's what he said. He said he believed in facts as you presented them,
Yeah,
but it
he
was kind
said
of
the
pointless
county
to go on.
Yeah, he didn't use the word the county
He
is
didn't
too
use pointless,
racist,
but
he said we don't believe we can get 12 people to agree on a verdict here. But what power does that give? I immediately busted up. I got this brother. I got another brother. I got sons, y'all, black men everywhere, kids. What does that say right now in Cincinnati? That if Arbery gets shot in the head tomorrow, if I'm a racist cop, I'm game. Because now all I got to do is run out the clock, get 2 hung juries, and I'm free. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
Do you believe there could have been a verdict of guilty if it kept going?
I think if you would go for it, you got to keep going. If in the United States of America we're going to honor and hold cops as heroes, then they got to be held to a higher damn standard when it comes to shooting people. And I am absolutely disgusted that Tenzing gets to shoot Sam in the head, run out the clock, and the lesson for all other bad cops out there now is just shoot them. Take the shot. Because, if you gambling, you probably won't get 12 people in Hamilton County. That's what we were basically told today.
You won't get 12 people in Hamilton County.
So, you asked about our next steps. We're going to go to the Department of Justice. I've sent a letter to them. We sent a whole bunch of stuff to them. And we're asking them to move forward on pursuing, charging Tenzing. And he could get life in jail, but that's not the point. The point is that Hamilton County, and on these streets where I was raised, where Sam was raised, he got shot in the head by a police officer. Sitting there talking about, yes, sir. I don't care what he did. He never put Sam's life at risk. Sam never put Tenzing's life at risk. He was never a threat. And if you all are looking at this, I want white, blacks, Asian, Indian, everybody in America to ask yourself, is this what you would want for your family member? The people who talking about get on with it, I don't know what that says. Maybe you don't love your family, because I can tell you I love mine. When you say get on with it, get over it, this has consumed my life. It's still going to consume it. I will hunt Tenzing for the rest of his life. If he goes to federal prison, that'll be nice. But you think I'm banking on that after this?
Hey, Tarina,
we can't get justice in this county.
Tarina, as a Cincinnati girl, are you disappointed in your fellow residents here in Hamilton County?
Actually, no. I'm impressed by all the people. The outpouring of support has been amazing. I am disappointed in the people who obviously wanted to say, because they're saying why they aren't convicting Sam. They're saying they aren't convicting Tizing, because he didn't comply. You know, Representative John Lewis from Georgia, from Atlanta, he's in the United States Congress, and I was watching a CNN event last weekend, and he's in the African American Museum up in D.C., and he puts on his headphones. They asked him to listen because he did sit-ins in the 60s, and they asked him to listen. This was just last week. And he puts the headphones on, and he's listening to the officers. This just does so much to me because he's listening to these officers in the 60s beat and yell black people sitting at the counter saying, if you don't get up, I'm going to kill you. If you don't get up, I'm going to beat you. Get up, N-word, get up, get up, get up. And I thought, it's not different today. Tizing put a bullet in my brother's head because he didn't comply with him. And everybody's saying, oh, well, we think that your brother deserved that bullet because of all the most ridiculous reasons that no law supports. Either we are moving forward or we're not. And right now, after watching John Lewis break down in tears when he heard that, I broke down because I felt like not just Sam, all the families that I know of right now that have not just they don't get another trial, they never got an indictment.